I've been helping people go to law school for over 20 years. I've coached thousands of students through the LSAT, through applications, through the whole process. And I've built my entire career on the belief that a law degree is one of the most valuable things a person can earn. But a couple of months ago, for the first time, I started to wonder if I was wrong. Because there are headlines everywhere about AI replacing lawyers, firms cutting staff, one of the biggest law firms on the planet laid off hundreds of people and pointed the finger at AI. I keep seeing the same number: 44% of legal tasks can now be automated. I read everything, and I'll be honest, some of it got to me. So I did what I always do when something doesn't sit right. I started pulling the data. I went looking for the actual numbers underneath the headlines. And what I found didn't just calm me down, it made me realize that the people pushing this story are missing something enormous, something that changes everything about how you should think about a career in law. But before I show you what I found, let me give the AI doomer argument its best shot, because it deserves one. I want to steel man their case. AI can do legal research in seconds, not minutes, but seconds. Work that used to take a first-year associate an entire day, pulling case law, finding statutes, identifying precedent across jurisdictions, AI does it in seconds. And the output is actually pretty decent. It's good enough that a senior attorney can work from it right away. Take document review, for example. This is the one that scares people the most. A commercial litigation case, 10,000 documents that need to be sorted for relevance and privilege. That used to eat up a team of junior associates for 2 to 3 weeks. AI can scan it, flag what matters, sort by category in just a couple of hours. Then look at contract drafting. You hand AI a term sheet and it gives you a first draft that's 80% of the way there. I'm not saying it's final or ready to sign, but a starting point that used to cost a client 8 to 10 hours of billable time at $500 an hour now takes 20 minutes. AI has also scored in the 90th percentile on the bar exam. So it not only passed, but scored in the 90th percentile. And so when you stack all that up, the conclusion seems obvious. If AI can do nearly half of all legal tasks, then you need fewer lawyers. Supply exceeds demand. Law school is a bad investment, therefore don't go. That argument might sound airtight, but it's also the same argument people have made about every major technology for 160 years, and it has been wrong every single time. Think back to the 1970s when ATMs first showed up. What happened to bank tellers? Everybody gets this wrong. I got it wrong the first time I heard it. The machine is literally called the automated teller machine. It does the teller's job, handles cash, takes deposits, shows balances. You would think game over for the teller, except it wasn't. In 1970, there were about 270,000 bank tellers in the US. By 2006, there were over 600,000. So that number more than doubled during the exact same period that 400,000 ATMs were installed across the country. An economist at Boston University named James Besson spent years figuring out why this happened. And the answer is so simple, it's almost annoying. ATMs cut the number of tellers each bank branch needed from about 21 to about 13. That's a big drop per location. But that also made each branch cheaper to operate. When branches got cheaper, banks opened more of them. The number of urban branches went up 43%. So you had fewer tellers per branch, but way more branches. And the total number of teller jobs went up for 30 straight years. The ATM did not replace the teller. It made banking cheaper. Cheaper banking meant more banking got done. More banking meant more tellers. The job changed, of course. Less counting cash, more advising clients, more relationship work. But we ended up with more people employed, not fewer. Now, economists have a name for this pattern. It's called the Jevons paradox. Goes back to the 1860s. Steam engines got more efficient, and everybody predicted England would burn less coal. But it turned out the opposite happened. Coal consumption went through the roof, because when the cost of energy dropped, 1,000 new uses became viable. Every time the cost of doing something becomes cheaper, People don't do the same amount for less money, they do way more of it. And before you said, well, that's just banking, law is different, this actually already happened in law once before. In the late 1990s, law firms started using electronic discovery software to automate doc review in litigation. That was nearly 30 years ago. And the prediction back then was obvious: we would need fewer paralegals. Everybody said that. But it turned out the opposite happened. The number of paralegals went up. Same pattern, same result in the legal profession specifically. And so the question isn't whether this pattern will repeat with AI and law. It repeats every single time. The question is really about how much room there is for legal demand to expand. And the answer is the most important number I'm going to share today: 92%. I want to let that number sit for a second before I tell you what it means. 92% is the share of civil legal problems faced by low-income Americans that receive no help or maybe not enough help. And that estimate comes from the Legal Services Corporation. It is a government-funded study from 2022. They surveyed over 500,000 households. 9 out of 10 civil legal problems in the wealthiest country on earth go unresolved. And it's not just low-income people. The middle class has their own version of this: small businesses, startups, freelancers, regular people who get into disputes they can't afford to fight. The US ranks 112th out of 143 countries on access to civil justice. We've dropped more than 40 spots in the last decade alone. Almost 50 million Americans fall into this gap every single year. Now imagine that you run a small business. A client owes you for $30,000. You have the signed contract, you have every email, you're in the right, there is no ambiguity. So you go to your lawyer and you ask what it would cost to sue. She says $50,000 minimum, could go higher. So you eat the cost. You absorb a $30,000 loss. That's money you earned, money that you are owed, because the system that's supposed to protect you costs more than what was stolen from you. So you got robbed twice, once by the client and once by the system. Or imagine, for example, you just came back from maternity leave. It's your first week back. Your manager calls you in and says your position has been eliminated. It's due to restructuring, nothing personal. Now, of course, everyone on your team knows what actually happened, and you know what actually happened. So you call an employment attorney that night. It's going to cost you $20,000 to $40,000 to fight it with no guarantee. Could drag on for 2 years, and you've got a newborn now. You need a paycheck right now. And so you know that something wrong was done to you, but you can't afford to do anything about it. Or imagine that you are a startup founder. You're moving fast, signing vendor agreements, partnership deals, licensing contracts. Every one of those should get legal review, but at $500 an hour, you're looking at $2,000 to $3,000 per contract, and you're signing dozens of them. The math doesn't work, and so you just skim the contracts and sign them and hope nothing blows up. Then 6 months later, you discover a non-compete clause buried on page 9 of a vendor agreement, and it blocks your biggest potential partnership. And nobody caught it because nobody could afford to look. Now, these are not edge cases, they're normal. That's how the legal system works for most people and most businesses in America. And I call this the ghost docket. The ghost docket is every lawsuit that should exist but doesn't, every claim that should be filed but isn't, every contract that should be reviewed but won't be, every dispute that should go through the system but dies before it starts because the system is too expensive for most people to use. And the ghost docket is not small, it is enormous. It dwarfs the legal market that we can see. The legal market that everybody talks about, the one that shows up in the employment data, the one that people say AI is going to shrink, that market serves maybe 10% of actual legal demand. The other 90% is invisible and never becomes a case, never becomes a billable hour, and never shows up in any stat until now. Because here is what happens when AI drops the cost of legal analysis by 70 to 80%. That ghost docket surfaces, it shows up. That $30,000 dispute, the lawsuit now only costs $15,000 instead of $50,000. And so now it makes financial sense, and so now you can sue. Or that wrongful termination, the cost to fight it drops from $30,000 to under $10,000, and now you've got a case. That contract review the startup skipped, $200 instead of $2,000. Now every deal can actually get reviewed. Now, multiply that across every small business, every startup, every consumer dispute, every employment case, every landlord-tenant fight, every contract that never got reviewed. The volume of legal work done in this country doesn't go down, it goes through the roof. And somebody has to do that work. Now, I already know the first objection. You're saying, sure, more legal work gets done, but people just use ChatGPT, they handle it themselves. That demand goes to AI, not to lawyers. It actually doesn't go to AI, and it's not even close, because every state has statutes governing the unauthorized practice of law. You cannot provide legal services without a license. AI doesn't have one, and it's not going to get one. Courts require licensed attorneys for most filings. You can't send a chatbot to submit a motion or appear at a hearing. Now, here is the one that ends this conversation. The other side has a lawyer. When you are in a real dispute, a contract fight, a custody battle, a negotiation with an insurance company, the other party has legal counsel. You're not going to show up with ChatGPT against their actual attorney. The moment that real money or real consequences are on the table, people hire lawyers. They always have, they always will. So the new demand doesn't go to self-service AI, it flows through lawyers. And of course, those lawyers will use AI to work faster and cheaper than was ever possible before. They'll take on more clients, they'll take on more cases, more legal work done by lawyers. And this is already happening. There's a small firm, for example, in San Francisco with 6 lawyers. One of their associates left for another job earlier this year. And instead of replacing him, they used AI tools to see if the team could absorb the work. A complaint that used to take 2 days to draft now takes 2.5 hours. Costs dropped by 27%, and profits went up. But here is the part that matters. The managing partner said the work didn't disappear, it got faster. And faster meant they could serve clients they never could have reached at the old price. The firm didn't shrink after losing a lawyer, it got faster, and then it grew. That is the ATM and the bank branch right there, happening right now in a real law firm with AI. Now, I've got to talk about something, because I think a lot of the fear out there is being driven by people who benefit from that fear. The tech investors pushing the AI replaces everybody narrative, they need you to believe that because that's how they justify their valuations. The media outlets running scary headlines about lawyers being finished, fear is driving clicks for them. The content creators telling you not to go to law school, the panic they generate gets them views. But you know who's not panicking? The people who actually practice law. Go actually read what working attorneys say about AI. They say it's a tool, and it's a good one. It makes them work faster, and they can't imagine going back. They're working more hours than before, not fewer. So that is the Jevons paradox in real time. The tool makes each unit of work cheaper, so you take on more work. You say yes to things you used to turn down. You serve clients you would have in the past sent away. AI doesn't make lawyers idle, it makes them more ambitious. Now, I want to talk about the headlines covering those layoffs, because I know a lot of you saw those, and that's when the panic really started. In February, Baker McKenzie, one of the 10 biggest law firms in the world, cut about 700 jobs, and they cited AI as a factor. Every comment section lit up saying it's happening, lawyers are done. But the headlines didn't tell you that those 700 positions were not lawyers. They were support staff, IT, marketing, admin, secretaries. And when staffing experts talked to the ABA Journal about it, they called AI the convenient excuse. The real drivers were overhiring and restructuring. A Wharton professor said it flat out, companies are saying AI takes over these jobs, but it hasn't actually happened yet. Baker McKenzie did not lay off 700 lawyers because of AI. They cut support staff because they binged on headcount during COVID and had to fix their books. They blamed the robots because it sounded better than saying, we lost discipline during COVID and now we're cleaning up the mess. That's not the future of law, it's a hangover from 2021. Now, the question I know a lot of you are thinking about more than anything else is what happens to junior associates, first-year associates, because that's where the doomer argument sounds the most convincing. Now, the work that new associates do, like doc review, research memos, due diligence, first drafts, that is exactly the work that AI does handle pretty well. And so if AI handles that work, what's left for the junior lawyer? Now, I want to walk you through what actually happens here because the vague version of this doesn't help anybody. The old model was for a first-year associate at a mid-sized firm. They get staffed on a commercial litigation case. They spend 60 hours over 2 weeks reviewing 10,000 documents for relevance and privilege. That's one case, 2 years of their life, maybe 15,000 billed. Under the new model, the same associate uses AI to run the initial document sort in 4 hours. Then they spend the rest of the day reviewing the AI's output, flagging the edge cases, pulling the key documents for the senior partner, and drafting the memo. What used to take 2 weeks now takes 2 days. Now, of course, they're not going home for the next 12 days. They are moving on to the next case and the next one and the one after that. The old model, the associate handles 3 or 4 active matters at a time. Under the new model, they're running 8 to 12. More cases, more fact patterns, more legal issues, more client contact, more strategic thinking, more real lawyering earlier in their career. And here's something nobody talks about. That associate in the new model, they learn more in their first 6 months than the old model associate learned in 2 years, because they see more cases, more types of disputes, more judges, more strategies. They develop judgment faster because they're exposed to more of the profession in less time. So the junior lawyer job didn't disappear. It gets better and faster and more interesting. And there are more of those jobs, not fewer, because remember what's happening here. The ghost docket is surfacing. All those cases that could not exist before because the economics didn't work, now they're coming online and somebody has to staff them. Now the firms that see this coming are going to hire. The firms that don't see it are going to cut their headcount, watch their competitors absorb the new demand, and they're going to wonder what happened. So everybody looking at this is measuring the wrong thing. They look at the current legal market, a market that leaves 92% of civil legal need on the table, and they ask whether AI is going to make it smaller. And that is the wrong question. The right question is what happens when the 90% that's been priced out can finally get in. The people telling you to avoid law school have never looked at the ghost docket. They don't know it exists. They're staring at the legal profession as it exists today, and they're projecting forward. But today's legal market is a fraction of the real market. It's a tiny sliver. The rest has been invisible for so long that nobody knew it was there. And the people who are loudest about the doom story, they're the ones who profit from it, the investors, the media, the creators, not those doing the work. Now, every pre-law student right now is hearing a story that has been wrong every single time it's been told. Wrong about coal and steam engines, wrong about ATMs and bank tellers, wrong about e-discovery and paralegals, wrong about spreadsheets and accountants. And it's also wrong about AI and lawyers. This pattern is 160 years old. Cost goes down, demand goes up, more work gets done, more people are needed to do it. The work changes, the jobs get better, and the people who panicked and walked away missed the biggest expansion of the profession in their lifetime. Now, almost 50 million people in this country fall into the justice gap every year. People who get evicted with nobody in their corner. People who lose custody fights they should have won. People who get fired illegally and sit at their kitchen tables knowing something wrong was done to them, knowing they can't do a thing about it, not because they don't have a case, but because they can't afford one. The ghost docket is real, it's been growing for decades, and AI is the first thing in the history of this profession that's going to crack it open. The question was never whether lawyers were going to be replaced. The question is whether we're going to have enough of them. Now, if you're looking to enter the legal profession, this might be the best time ever, and I'm here to help you out. If you're looking for support with your LSAT prep, looking to get into better law schools, get more scholarship money, I'm happy to help you out. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring for everybody watching this now or later. The link to book that free tutoring lesson with me is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG. That is an open offer for everyone watching this. And by the way, for those just joining, I offer these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching this. Please spread the word. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these lives, and the algorithm doesn't really boost them because they can't run ads during them, and the LSAT's kind of a niche subject. So I do appreciate your support, spreading the word. Feel free to drop any questions in the comments on anything LSAT and law school admissions. I will get to as many of those as I can. Just drop them in. I see Deville is asking, what are some good books to read before the LSAT? So I actually wouldn't recommend books in particular for LSAT prep because the LSAT is not administered on paper anymore. The LSAT is now online. It's been online on the computer or tablet for about 7 years now. It was on a tablet in 2019. They moved it onto the computer at the start of the pandemic. And of course, they haven't really looked back from that. And the LSAT's changed a lot over the years. And so a lot of your prep books out there are going to be outdated. And your LSAT for dummies and such are using fake LSAT questions. They're often unrealistic and if not flawed. And so I wouldn't waste your time on those. I would get the real, actual official LSAT practice tests on the LSAC Law Hub platform. You get 4 of those for free with a free lsac.org account. The rest you get with a Law Hub subscription, well worth the investment. Of course, the practice tests on Law Hub, most of them do not include explanations. And so I would recommend getting some additional support, maybe a course, maybe some coaching, maybe a class. We offer all of the above at LSAT Unplugged. We offer private customized coaching programs, on-demand courses, small group coaching, personalized study plans. If you want to talk through what your plan could look like, you can book a free LSAT lesson with me personally at unpluggedprep.com/start. Again, the link is below the video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok and IG as well. I see Mickey or Mikey's asking, does a graduate degree GPA count when you're applying? Sadly, no. I mean, they'll see it for context, but not in a hard numbers sense. For law school admission purposes, only your undergraduate GPA is considered. Grad school GPA is not factored into the calculations, in part because not everybody has a grad school GPA and because grad school GPAs are often higher anyway because you're specializing more there. And so it's the undergraduate GPA that really matters. And so, of course, if it's not what you would have liked it to be, if it's lower than you were hoping for, the best thing you could do at this stage is get a higher LSAT score to compensate. I see Rush is asking, should I get a tutor now or wait? My diagnostic was a 142 a year ago. Well, I would first want you to get a more recent data point to get a better indication of where you currently stand. A 142 a year ago might look very different now. Let's get a more recent sense of where you stand as a benchmark from which to measure your future progress. And of course, you could get the tutoring now, you could get it later. I typically recommend front-loading the support, getting it sooner, because that way you can implement the changes and level up the efficiency of your studying going forward. So hypothetically, if you were only going to do a couple hours of tutoring, I would use them now to set the stage for a stronger foundation to make all your studying in the future that much better. Don't save it for later and make mistakes in the meantime. Don't build bad habits in the short term. Start now with the support, then set yourself up for success down the line. And if you want to talk through what that could look like, of course, you could book the free tutoring with me and we could talk through it more together. I see Sherry's asking, should I retake a 173 as a splitter who's reapplying to a top 14 or focus on work experience? Well, you're mentioning you're a splitter, which means high LSAT, low GPA. I guess my question is, what's your GPA like? For reference, for those who aren't aware, the top 14 law schools all have LSAT medians of roughly 170 to 174. So a 173 is on the higher end of that, but not necessarily above the medians. Their GPA medians are all roughly 3.9 or so. And so I see Sherry saying a 3.76. So a 3.76 is notably or significantly below the median. So ideally, you'd want to have a 175 plus to compensate. So I'd recommend retaking the LSAT to get that 175 plus. It'll do a lot more for you to get a couple points more on the LSAT than to get more work experience. And of course, you can do both. You can both retake the LSAT and get more work experience. But if I had to choose one, I would focus on getting a couple more points on the LSAT. I see Ray Antoinette saying, I want to apply for UCI 2027. I feel lost though. Okay, so you want to start law school in 2027. That means you're applying ideally in fall 2026, about 5 months or so from now if you're applying at the beginning of the cycle. That's plenty of time to take the LSAT if you're ready for it. I mean, you could take the LSAT in August or September and apply when applications open or soon after that. I'm curious to know if you started studying for the LSAT already. If not, it's not too late to start now. 4 to 5 months is plenty of time to improve significantly from whatever your starting point is. You can really make anything happen over that period of time, but I wouldn't wait. I would start now. I see that you are starting just now. That's great. I mean, there's time to build a strong foundation. There's time to work on your pacing. There's time to take full practice tests. But I would make this your priority over the next 5 months or so. Maybe aim for August as your first take, September as your second take. If you want help talking through a study plan, you can book a free tutoring lesson with me. We can talk through it together. But yes, there is enough time. I see a question asking, I'm a current freshman at Fordham. What's your advice to somebody who wants to go to a top 10 law school as a poli-sci minor? Okay, yeah, I hear you. I mean, I studied poli-sci as well. What you want to do is, first and foremost, that really applies to anybody, regardless of your major or minor, is maintain a good GPA. The best thing you could do early in college is, number one, maintain a solid GPA. Number two, explore whether law school is truly what you want to do. Talk to current attorneys, maybe get an internship at a law firm, get some real world exposure to this, see whether it's whether you want to pursue. Law school's not going anywhere. The LSAT's not going anywhere. You could take a break from the LSAT and law school stuff, come back to this in a year, start studying as a sophomore, take the LSAT as a junior, apply the second applications open in fall of your senior year if you want to go straight from undergrad into law school. You don't have to start that early, but you can. And if you're a gunner, you want to take advantage of every moment, why not? I mean, the benefit of starting early is that, number one, you have more time to achieve a top score. Most of the folks who get a 170 plus aren't cramming this in 2 to 3 months. They're giving it a bit more time. Not saying you have to, but it will help, of course. The other thing you should know is that LSAT scores are good for 5 years. And so if you knock it out as a sophomore or a junior, your LSAT score will still be good when you finish undergrad, typically. And so it's not too early to start as a junior or sophomore, but as a freshman, I think I would just maintain the GPA. The LSAT's not going anywhere. I see Caitlin's asking, should I continue to take LSAT practice questions on ChatGPT? No, definitely not. And I would have never recommended you start doing that in the first place. First of all, because ChatGPT is not great at the LSAT. It's pretty good, but not perfect, and it makes mistakes sometimes, and you don't know when it's making a mistake. So why take the risk? There are approximately 8,000 official LSAT questions on the LSAC Law Hub platform in dozens of real actual practice tests. So why would you go outside of those? Those questions have been vetted, quality checked, proofed, tested, refined, perfected with philosophy PhDs undergoing a severe degree of rigor unmatched by any other testing organization. In other words, LSAT questions are just a higher caliber than questions on other exams. ChatGPT is an approximation, it's a guess, it's an estimate. It's not perfect. It still gets tough LSAT questions wrong. And it's not good at making LSAT questions either. It's unreliable. So I wouldn't use it at all. I would use the official questions in Law Hub directly. Parker's asking, can you go to law school if you studied finance? Yeah, you can. You can major in literally anything and go to law school. Law schools will not discriminate against you just because you studied something other than a pre-law major. They don't care what you studied. You can major in anything. Just make sure that you maintain a good GPA. That's all that matters for law school admissions purposes. I see Johnny's asking, are all law schools requiring the LSAT? Technically, they're not requiring it. There are a decent number of schools that will allow you to apply without an LSAT score, but hardly anybody actually gets in without an LSAT score. Those are usually edge cases, particular unique circumstances of folks with incredible work experience and backgrounds. But for the typical student, you want to have the LSAT, not only to get in, but also to get scholarship money. If you don't have an LSAT score on your record, law schools are going to wonder why you don't have one. It'll be a kind of a red flag, and you don't want to leave any questions unanswered. Like, why doesn't this applicant have an LSAT score on record? So first and foremost, have the LSAT score on your record, show that you've got what it takes to succeed in law school and pass the bar exam, and give them reason to give you scholarship money by applying with strong numbers. Justin's asking, is it a good idea to serve in the military before law school? If you have military experience, that's great. Law schools will certainly appreciate that. But I would not go serve in the military for law school admissions purposes. If you have it, of course, include it on your resume. They'll see it there, of course, include it in your essays, but don't over-index on that. What they care more about than your military service is your LSAT and your GPA. One way the military service can help, of course, is if it If through the GI Bill, you can get the government to pay for your law school. In that case, scholarships no longer really matter. You can go to the best law school you can get into, regardless of the tuition, because the government's footing the bill.